Now coming on to the option of DAX. So what is a DAX in Power BI? Okay, what do you understand by the DAX in Power BI? What's the full form of DAX? DAX is nothing, but it is said as data analysis expression. So it's nothing. It's a programming language basically that is used throughout the Microsoft Power BI for creating any calculated columns. Okay, now we have learned about that. Okay, we saw that we have columns, new columns from where we can do calculations. Then we have new measures, we can do the calculations. That's true. You can do that. So these are something which are related to like DAX functions. So they are nothing, but they are the data analytics expression only, where we bring or we create calculated columns, we create calculated measures. So these calculated columns, creation of calculated measures, and a custom table is all a collection of a function. So it is all collectively called as a DAX function. Whether you are creating a calculated table, calculation of measures, you are creating a calculated table, you are unioning two tables together, you are creating any calculations in the table or anything of that sort, everything comes under the section of DAX, which is called as data analysis expressions. Now, these can be used in formula or expression to calculate and return one or more values. If you want to return one value, if you want to return more than one value, so you can use that. Okay, you can use DAX to solve a number of calculation and data analysis problem, which helps you to create new information from the data which is already available in the model. So whatever the informations you have in the data, you want to produce for it, you want to work for that, then on that basis, you can basically produce that results and you can get your output away. So like the way we did for calculations of creating profit per unit or sales per unit, like that way we can do all of that. So these are all called as the DAX calculation. In a small form, it is called as DAX calculation, but in a larger form, the full form is data analytical expressions. Okay. So what is the help of this DAX calculation? So basically, your DAX calculation will help you to build quick measures, will help you to create some calculated columns. So this DAX help you to build your measures very quickly. Okay, whatever measures you want to create, whatever like data you want to create for, so they help you very quickly with all of that, with time intelligence measures and everything. So this is pretty helpful in that. Now, there are two types of DAX functions, and in fact, there are many DAX functions that are basically available. Okay, DAX functions have many basic values, and a lot of DAX functions are there. Like for example, what now the thing is that how your Excel functions and DAX functions are probably different. That's the question which comes up. So DAX functions are there, like you have Excel function and you have DAX functions. So DAX functions are there for certain difference too, because what happens, DAX is a lookup function that are similar to the array and vector lookup functions that we have in Excel. Okay, now what are the difference that we have for a DAX function, and why not we have the DAX function in Excel? What's the difference of DAX function is different from the usual Excel functions? So DAX functions have been modified in a way that it might return a different data type. Okay, it might happen that it might return a different data type. Hence, you need to understand the usage of this function separately. Next is you cannot use a DAX function or a DAX formula in any of the Excel functions without any modifications or any of the things. Then Excel functions always take a cell reference, which is not there. Whereas DAX functions never takes a cell reference. It will always take instead it takes a column or a table reference. So you have always seen whenever we were applying like the DAX functions over here, whenever, let me show you. So if you see on this report view, the data view basically, that in this, like I created a column of product size description. If you see this formula, it's always take the column name or anything of that sort. In fact, in this one also, takes the name of the sheet and then created your formula. So orders is the name of the table or the sheet. So it always take the reference of your sheet or the table rather than taking the taking the column reference. That's the most important thing that you have, and that's the most important reason. Now then, Excel date and time functions return an integer that represent a date or a serial number. Whereas whenever you are using any of the DAX function, that returns a date time data type, right? Like if you are using any functions, for example, let's say when we created this current date, where it went? When I created this column of current date and when I return this, so when I use this column of current date and I want to return a date from it. So if you have seen, then that is that returned me as a format of a date and it didn't return me into a number. But that doesn't happen in Excel. In Excel, whenever you are trying to get a date formula, it will return you in the form of a text or anything. Okay, then there are no functions in Excel which can actually work with a table. Only you have array functions, but also in array there are a lot of limitations. That's why we can't work with the table functions completely. But in DAX, as we have the reference to the table itself, so obviously it's pretty easy for us to actually work with the DAX function in a lot easier way and in a lot better way in that sense. Okay, so we can easily work with those functions and we can easily refer to that tables, columns, perform the calculations, return tables, return all the calculations of the tables, performs the calculations, and all of this ability we can do very easily in that case. Okay, then DAX lookup functions requires a relationship which is established. So if you are using a DAX lookup functions, that requires a relationship which is already established. So you don't have to establish those relationships basically. Those relationships are already established. So whenever I created any formula over here and when I was representing that in any of the report, let's say in this case, when I was representing it, or probably in this section, when I tried to represent it, wherein I took a product name from the product table, whereas I took the total sales per quantity from a different table altogether. So if you see in that case, see, I have taken from two different tables. The columns have been taken up from two different tables. So that created the relationship automatically, which doesn't happen for the case of Excel. When we have to do it, we have to create a relationship first, then only we can actually plot the graphs against it or plot any of the visuals against it. Okay. Now, what are the types of DAX functions that we have? So there are a variety of DAX functions that we have in place. So let's go through them. See, there are some DAX functions that are available in the place. So there is a text DAX function, there is aggregate DAX function, you have minimum, date, filter, related, maximum, counting, all, calendar. Text DAX function is basically for the text values, like whenever you want to convert anything from a text value to a string value or from a string to a text or anything or vice versa, then we use a text value. Aggregates are basically whenever you want to have by the group by or maybe with the aggregated functions or a table value. So basically aggregated functions are expressions over one row of a table that's are useful. So that is called as your aggregations that you explain to it. Okay. Then we have the minimum. So if you want to find anything minimum from the table, then we have dates. So if you want to have the dates, if you want to filter anything. So basically in the data, let's say I want to filter for a condition and then I want to apply a formula. then I can use a DAX filter condition for that. Then related. So related is something which is related to the information or any of the sections or anything like naming conventions or anything related to a column, or maybe in a specific table if I want to relate to a specific entry or maybe any specific product. So then I can use a relate. Max, obviously, for the maximum number of the count of the data set. Then counting, if I want to do any counting of the columns, like for count, average, min, max, I want to do a count, counter, maybe count day, count blanks. For all these stuffs, I use a counting. And all is basically used for all of the data sets that we use. So these are all the DAX functions that we have in our data and how we work with it. Okay. These are called as your DAX functions. Now, DAX functions always have a structure. DAX functions have a naming convention. So you will always have first an expression, then you will have some values, then you will specify for the table, and then the table name, then probably the column name. That is how a DAX function works. So if you see over here, when I started it, I give it a table name. So the expression started as a table. So basically that expression started as a name of the table or name of the column or calculation that you want to do. And after that, it started with whatever the name of the sheet you are having based on that. So the sheet one is my sheet name or my table name basically. And here I give the column name quantity. And then after that, I use the same sheet to get the unit price and I multiplied it by that. So basically, you get your table name, you get the column name of that table, then you give the expression that whatever function or expression you want to use for, then again you get the table name and then the column name against it, and then you get your formulas in it. So there's an order, there's size, there are types, there are checks, there are everything that is there. Okay. So yes, that's about your DAX functions, how we work with the DAX functions, what are the importance of DAX functions, why, where is DAX functions used. So DAX functions are basically used whenever you want to have a custom calculation for any custom column and measure. That is known as a DAX function. So basically that can be used as a formula, that can be used as a language, that can be used as an advantage of it. Now, what's the advantage of a DAX function? That's the most important. So basically, your DAX function can help you manipulate your data dynamically by using a select, join, filter, and many more commands like the way we did for this one. That I wanted to have a sum of total sales per quantity. So I wrote a DAX function. I created a column of measure. I created a calculated column and I just combined that formula and I got my result. So that's a functionality wherein if I want to do anything, I can do it very easily. Similarly, for this case, if I want to have it in a full form, so I can show that in a full form. That's what's the description or what's the product name or how we can show it up or what is that counts or anything of that sort. So that is also one of the very important thing that we can show up in DAX functions. So that's the very important thing that you can manipulate your data. So here I actually manipulated my data in all of the ways so that I can easily get all the data functions, all the data handlings, all the data modelings and any of these stuffs. And I don't in fact face any issues in that. So this is how we created the DAX function so that we can manipulate our data according to our need, wherein there we can have the total sales per quantity if I want to see, if I want to change those abbreviations to, let's say, for the full forms, we can do that. If I want to combine two columns together, then I can do that. In fact, you can make your Power BI more smarter in that case, because once you enter the DAX function, now if your data get refreshed any of the time, anytime, in any way or any which ways, then obviously you don't have to again write those functions. So they are just one time that you write these functions one time and you're good to go. If your data gets refreshed every time, obviously your data will be getting refreshed, but these functions not to be changed again and again. They will work accordingly and they will give you the exact results. So that's how you make your reports more dynamic, wherein you have already applied the formula, you have already given the system a formula to work for, and they are using that formula and is easily working on that condition. So that is also one of the most important thing that works on and helps you to inculcate with the DAX formulas and DAX stuffs and everything. Correct? So that is also one of an important benefit of it, that you can make your parameters and you can make your work more dynamic. You can make your dashboards and your Power BI more smarter in that case by possibly using these columns. And they also makes your dashboard, like they also make constrain the data on your dashboard, so you don't have to like fetch on multiple columns. So like in that sense, if I created a sum of total for these two sections, or let's say in this case I have sales from two different years. Okay, now if I want to see those sales for two different years, so rather than fetching the two different tables on Power BI, I have just combined those two tables together. Now what's happened with this, that in this scenario I can now have full data that is available, and if I want to fetch for that information of the full data in the table, I can see it simply. So for all the years, now let's say if I want to ever bring a slicer over here for this scenario, and let's suppose from here I put the filter for month, year, correct? And probably I change the slicer to a child, right? And if I want to see for 2019, data get filtered for 2019. Similarly, if I want to see for 2020, the data get filtered for 2020. In fact, I'll on the legends quickly. Okay, let me just, yeah. Let me just quickly add the legends. What's not getting on? I don't have any legends value on that. No, that's fine. No problem. I can put that up. Think that's won't be an issue. But I want to put on the legends. Okay. Yeah. So let me just on the data labels. That will be perfect. And now let's just see. So see, that's what I'm trying to explain, that in this DAX, the most important thing is we can just simply make it more faster. Now in this case, when I union the table together, I use a DAX formula where I union the table together. I created a complete new table where I have combined the 2019 and 2020 data, correct? When I use that formula. Now, the thing is that it makes my data and more faster in that case. Now, how it made my data more faster? So I can see, like see, now I have the complete data set of a line table where for the respective months, I can see what is the overall profit for that particular year. Let's say I'll just filter it for 2019. I'm able to see the data for 2019. I'll just filter it for 2020. I'm able to see the data for 2020. Now, let's suppose in future, if you have a new data coming in, if let's say you get data for 2021 also, you just not need to have do anything. You have a formula table and a table is already created. So it is going to automatically union the data for you, and there will be a third filter added of 2023 and your data will get union, and you just have to click on that filters to see the data. So that's how it makes your data or your database more smarter in that case. Okay, it made your data more smarter by this way. It made that more smarter and it made them more optimized in that way. Okay, then instead of like an operations where you have context filters or you have some work optimizations rather than this, then if you have a DAX over there, so if let's say in this sheet only I would have used the sales data, I would have created a sales data for 2019, then I would have created something from the 2020 data, then I would have applied the filters, then I would have worked with that. So that would be kind of very like diplomatic, like let me show you. Let's say I take a line chart. I take two line charts, probably next to each other. Let's say I'll replicate this one, okay? I'll replicate this month and my overall sales in these two charts. So let's say month, let's take this month, right? Now for this one, I'm going to use this table, month and profit. Okay, let me expand this. Let me bring this down and let me expand it. See, now I have tables from 2019, 2020. Okay, let me bring a slicer over here for you guys. And let's format it a bit. Let's expand this also. This one also. And let's take year from any of them. And just yeah, check. See, you get the year for 2020 over here. Now, similarly, if I bring a new child for this one, and let's format it, it's child. So now I have two tiles in place. Now I have two tiles in place. Okay, 2019, 2020. And I have two charts from two different tables, sales data 2019 and sales data 2020. Correct? Now, if I want to filter it across, like if I filter it, see, it will work for this one. And if I filter for 2019, it will work for this one. So this is the issue. You have a lot of data and you have a lot of data set applying to that. So if I work for 2019, it will filter for this. It is not working on the combine. So for each of them, I have to create a new filter. I have to get the new filters for each of the file. I have to get the new tables, like two different, you can see two different charts I have to create based on that data. If the data was separated, then I have to give two filters. Rather than this was much more beneficial wherein I combine the two data set. And now if I want to see for 2019, I want to see for 2020, I can see in the same chart. And in fact, in future, if let's suppose the data comes in and expand for 2021, 2022, 2023, it will be more beneficial in that way. Why? Because in that sense, what you will have is that in place that you will have more lists, the list will expand. Obviously, you have a union function already available. So automatically that list is going to expand and that list is going to suffice for that data set basically. And it will help you in more functional way or anything of that sort, right? So it basically will help you in a more functional way, in a more workable way, in a more lenient way in that way. So that's also a very most important aspect of having a DAX function. So in conclusion, what we can say that we have various DAX function and that these DAX functions are very much useful also, very much helpful also in all the ways, in all the walks of life. However you work it, however you not work it, you make it work or anything of that sort, it works in a very good way in that sense. Okay. And in that way, whenever you work with it or whenever you look for it or you do it in a way, then it works in a very good way. It's like work will help you in a work or it will help you in making it more useful and more workable in that sense. Okay. So that was about the DAX functions and what are the different types of DAX functions that you have in your